Journeys of Hope. Life is a journey, and this is your spiritual passport. Where will the journey take us today? Let's walk together as we learn to become people of faith and hope.
Welcome to Journeys of Hope. I'm Angela Sealana, one of your guides for today's journey, and I serve as media coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, where we're recording at St. Joseph's Studio. Pilgrim Center of Hope, producer of this weekly radio and podcast program, is a nonprofit ministry founded in 1993 with a mission of guiding people to walk in hope with Christ and the Church. Hey, have you ever wondered what is it like for a man who is on the journey toward the Catholic priesthood? And why do men enter the seminary? What's it like? What impact does their journey have on their family and friends? Well, on today's journey, we're going to be diving into this whole concept, this whole life, and many viewpoints on it. Joining us on the way, first of all, is Auxiliary Bishop Gary Janak of the Archdiocese of San Antonio, who is also Vocation Director and Director of Seminarians. So welcome, Bishop Gary.
Thank you, Angela. It's nice to be here.
Thank you for being here. And we also are joined by Seminarians Moses Castro and Luis de la Cruz. Welcome and thank you for coming to share your experience.
Of course, happy to be here, Angela.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'll begin also by sharing that, yes, I'm going to be approaching this more as a discussion because I do have some relevant experience. I did discern religious life myself. My husband, prior to our dating relationship, he discerned a possible vocation to priesthood within a religious community for an extended period of time. I have a great uncle who is a religious priest, and so I've experienced that kind of lifestyle and his own experiences as well through my family's eyes. One of my uncles studied at Assumption Seminary for a while before discerning a call to marriage. And people might be saying, what is that all about? How can you enter seminary and come out? And then one of my best friends from school actually became a Catholic priest, and I've been able to journey with him as a friend. And so, gentlemen, we all understand, I think, as Catholics that priests are important to have, but they don't magically come out of the sky from God, right? So for someone listening who's never experienced that appeal or that tug toward a vocation to religious life or priesthood, I would like to ask for all of you, share a little bit about what prompted you to become a priest or enter seminary. So I'll start with the seminarians, if you don't mind, and then we'll get the priest's experience, the bishop's experience. So Moses, you're right here next to me. What drew you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a question I get a lot as I'm out and about at parishes, meeting the people of God. And one of the things I tell them repeatedly is that there was just a warm sense in my heart of an invitation from the Lord. So that call that we speak a lot about, that this invitation to grow in a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ ultimately. And for me, that sense or that call to the priesthood really came when I was at college, in fact, which could be surprising for a lot of people listening. But I was at Texas State University in San Marcos, and the campus ministry director there, Father Brian, just asked me one day, Moses, have you ever thought about becoming a priest? And at that invitation, it was something I took to prayer, and I discerned, prayerfully considering a decision and a choice. And the more and more I sat with it, I recognized that there was a deep desire within me to just be a really good friends with Jesus. And I think we're all called to that kind of relationship with Jesus. But for me in particular, in my own journey and my own discernment, it was revealed to me more and more that it was through the vocation of priesthood. And so just having the support, the conversations with those who are around me, those who knew me well, there was a lot of encouragement and support for me to open up to go down that path and that journey of, Lord, are you calling me to become a priest? And if so, what would that look like? And so it's been a long journey for sure, and full of ups and downs and twists and turns, but all that to say, it's been a beautiful gift and a joy thus far in my vocational discernment.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Luis, how about you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that prompted everything was just that initial prayer life, just having a conversation with the Lord. And so I say the deeper the question, the deeper the relationship. And I think it's like that in any relationship. And so as I started to go deeper into my prayer life, I started realizing I was asking Jesus for deeper questions, like, where do you see me? What do you want of me, Lord? And so that was something that was underlining through my entire life, just increasing that question to a deeper level. And so, yeah, I started off and I wanted to be a priest sometime around like 1920. And so there was, my parents had and my family had a little bit of a struggle because there's a lot of misconceptions out there of what happens when you become a priest. What does that mean? What do you have to,
Right.
So, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that right now, but I ended up waiting, and I actually met Moses at Texas State.
Wow.
And I did not know he wanted to be a priest then either. Yeah, not till way later. But I ended up working as a teacher. And I always say, as a teacher, it's very difficult to find all three things: amazing administration, amazing students, and amazing coworkers. And I found a place where I found all three of them. And I felt this was the Lord invited me. I gave you everything that you wanted. Is this enough for you? And so I started asking that question to myself and to the Lord, is this really enough? And the answer was no. I know you've been calling me. And so that was that invitation to jump to the seminary and enter to that next phase of discernment.
Awesome. So you two gentlemen really, you felt the call early. It was kind of like a seed planted in your heart, but it took a while before you actually took the leap and entered seminary. Am I getting that story right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good to know. That's good to establish. It's not just like you get the idea and then all of a sudden you're on the ground running, right? It is a process. It's like any friendship or relationship, right? Okay, Bishop Gary, how about you?
I would say that I'm a lifer. So the guys know my story. It's just, I always thought about being a priest. I was 4 years old, going to daily mass with my mom and being just intrigued with what was going on behind the altar, what that man was doing. I didn't understand it until much later, obviously. But it was always been the Eucharist that has drawn me to the priesthood to this day. And that's exactly how I solidified my vocation to make that leap, so to speak, to go into the seminary. Because I thought about a lot of other things like any teenage boy would do. And eventually, thinking, well, maybe I do this or that. And I had in many ways running from the idea. Just running, because it kept coming back to me. It always did. Like I said, I don't think there was ever a time I didn't think about it, but I did try to run from it. And when I went to college, at junior college, it was just, it was still there, but I think I'm on the right road. I'm not going to pursue this. Then I went to UT in Austin, and when I was at big university, and I grew up in a little town here in Texas, and that was just overwhelming in so many ways, exciting nonetheless. And yet I found myself going to mass every day. Every day I would go, and my roommate, who's not Catholic, said, Gary, it's great you're going to mass, but it's like, why do you go every day? I didn't tell him that. Just thinking, because at that time in the 80s, it was like business school. If you get into business school at UT, that was it. Boy, that's your road to success. And I got in. And I'm sitting in an accounting class with 500 students, and the teacher is way up there, and you have to have binoculars almost to see him. And he wrote the textbook. And I remember going home after getting into that class, I went home and I told my roommate, I'm going to drop the class. He said, you're crazy. But in the end, I just kept searching I stayed for another semester, and I was lost, and I'd never been lost in my life. And that's when I knew I needed to try it out. And so I went to the seminary. It's like, it wouldn't happen today, but that was like in March. Told my parents, spoke to the vocation director, and I was in the seminary in August.
Wow. So I'm glad that we have a variety of experiences here. That's awesome. Bishop Gary, what was the reaction of your family and friends when you made that decision? Were they pretty much on board with it and they expected it because you had such a young,
Right.
you had an appeal from the beginning?
Yeah, because they knew I was thinking about it. I mean, I played church all the time, played mass. My poor little sister, my baby sister, by the time she was in kindergarten, I mean, she had gone to hundreds and hundreds of masses already. So, so they knew I was thinking about it. But it's interesting when, for my family, I have a great uncle that was a priest. I had 4 great aunts that were CDPs, where they were religious sisters. My godfather, like my second dad, was a permanent deacon. And cousin is a permanent deacon. So I had a lot of religious in my family, and one priest. But when everyone was excited, everyone not surprised, etc. And my roommate, he was the last one that I told him I'm not going back. Sorry. And he says, and he was probably the most supportive. But it was my mom.
Awesome.
It was my mom that was really quiet about it. Never discouraged. But I remember it was, we were raised, I was raised in a very small house, and bathroom was next to their bathroom, this kind of thing. And we shared it. And I remember getting dressed, and my mom finally I just asked her, I said, do you not think I should go? And she says, it's not that. It's just, I'm just concerned that you might be lonely. And that was always kind of, maybe it's a mom's response. So she was the one that wasn't discouraging, but yet unusually quiet. My dad already had me ordained. but in the end, it was my mom, who's alive to this day. She's 91 years old. She has seen the fullness of that life, and she's met so many people because I'm a priest, and she recognizes it's really not about loneliness. It's like there's a lot of support out there as a priest.
That's great. That's great. Yes, that is one misconception I know of. And I just want to know from the seminarians, are you lonely?
I guess I can start. For me, what I've come to realize, because I guess going through the process and then having friends who choose a different vocation, who are married and have kids now, what I've realized is just because you're married doesn't mean that you don't feel loneliness.
Amen.
And so that happens in all vocations, that aspect. And it's something that we are restless. And so when I came to that realization, I realized there's something deeper than just loneliness. And what I say is that loneliness is the soil that when you plant prayer in, solitude blooms forth. And so that beautiful solitude of being with the Lord fills you with that presence, because loneliness really is a desire to be known. And for me, being in this discernment process, I feel like I've entered into this space of being known unlike I've never been known. And so that's where, it's not to say that I never feel lonely at times, but there's this intimacy that I never imagined I could experience with God that has been a real comfort in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. How about you?
Certainly, I'm agreeing entirely with what Luis has shared. I think growing in that awareness that loneliness is a human experience for anyone and everyone. The gift, though, that seminarians in formation for the priesthood is that we're given those resources and those tools necessary to be able to experience loneliness but not dwell in that space. And so the gift of formation offers us formation advising, spiritual direction, a confessor, brother seminarians who desire holiness for themselves as well and those around them, the gift of other priests in our lives as well, and then the lay faithful who certainly support us and pray for us continuously. And so recognizing that loneliness may stem out of a particular moment or experience in which we feel that there's a sense of something lacking, but recognizing that we don't have to choose to stay in that space. But there, just like Luis was saying, that if we enter into prayer and offer that to the Lord, then something really beautiful can come out of it. And so just growing in that awareness, how to respond to it. And I think this is important for anyone, any human person, because we, like I said already, we all experience loneliness. And so to grow in awareness of how do I respond to that? What does that mean for me? Is a great tool and resource to continue on the journey.
Well, Bishop Gary, I'd like to ask you, because we're talking about loneliness, and I think for a lot of people it would seem when we speak about the vocation to priesthood, we know that there is a celibacy portion to that, right? Mm-hmm. And so what would you say as vocations director, like what are some of the ways that you could address someone to help them understand, what is a vocation and the celibacy piece? How do those come together and help one another and help the church and work within a person?
Certainly. I think celibacy really is a distinct calling. It's I think the requirement is to be celibate for the most part. Okay, sometimes there are married men that are Catholic priests, but for the most part, okay, we are celibate. We're not married. All are called to chastity, certainly. But I think that distinct calling that it is, beginning to help a young man to understand the gift that it can be as well. And of knowing that in marriage, I mean, I've learned so much about my priesthood, therefore about myself, with married couples. I mean, I loved, as a parish priest, preparing couples for marriage, engaged couples, and counseling married couples. And they've taught me so much over the years. And that includes that understanding of really what is a relationship. The seminarians were speaking about that connectedness with God, that relationship. To understand celibacy, you have to understand, what am I looking for in my life in terms of relationship? Okay, it's not just, okay, I'm not going to be married. It has to be more than that. Otherwise, I'm going to set myself up.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone would. But understanding of knowing that my spouse is the people of God. It's the church. So married couples taught me that. And when I was ordained a bishop 4 years ago, they even put a ring on my finger. I never wore a ring, and I wear one now. As that reminder, it's a beautiful part of the ritual of the fact that we are wedded. So people say, well, you're not married. But I am, in the sense that I'm married to the church. Therefore, I have obligations. I have the gifts that come from that relationship, and therefore it's a responsibility to be in relationship with people. So if it's a young man that's saying, I struggle with the celibacy part. I want to be a priest, but I don't think I can be celibate. Then you know what? You're probably not ready to be a priest, certainly, but maybe you're not ready to be married either.
Absolutely.
Because
there
has to be right. There has to be that understanding of relationship. Because if it's going to be just one-sided, what are you going to give me? What am I going to get out of this? And there's no sense of sacrifice. I would really be honest with that young man and say, you're probably not going to be really happy as a husband either. Because both require a commitment, both require sacrifice, both require a self-giving of oneself. And if it's one-sided, as I said, to just what am I going to get out of it, you'll be disappointed. I would be disappointed if I entered priesthood in that kind of way. So I think that's what I would say, to understand it's not so much what I'm giving up, it's what I'm taking on. First and foremost, my relationship with Christ, and then my own wedded relationship, so to speak, my spousal relationship with the people of God through the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate those words. And the reality is absolutely true that no matter what kind of relationship God calls you to, you're still learning about yourself. You're learning about the body of Christ, about others, right? And about God through that relationship. And so that is truly a beautiful way to see it. One of the things that I've seen with my friend who's now a priest and has been for several years is that I've seen him grow as a person, right, through that priesthood in beautiful ways that he would never have been able to, I think, even as a married person or as a single person, because the vocation of priesthood is so unique and beautiful in that, as you said, Bishop Gary, you are wedded to the bride of Christ. And so for him as a pastor to be able to be present to his people as that father figure, as, in the person of Christ, it really has transformed him. I've seen over the years. What would you say, any of you, I'll open this up to any of you, talk about what the vocation of priesthood and being that representative of Christ, what does that really mean for a person? Because I think a lot of times we can see it as like an abstract, as like a theological concept of, yes, the priest is, in persona Christi. And there is a mystery to that, right? There is this beautiful reality to it. But there's also, like, it touches your humanity as well. So any thoughts on just what does that mean for a man to become a priest and then to be transformed in that regard? That you've seen, that you've learned about in your seminary formation?
I can. Well, not a priest yet, so I don't know the full experience in that sense. But from God willing, I'll be ordained in May 24th as a deacon, and then sometime after a priest. And one of the things that I keep coming back to is this identity of the priest. For me, has become more and more of this melding of hearts, of my heart being so united to the Sacred Heart that it's Christ's love loving His people. And I think for me that's at the heart of the priesthood is the heart of Christ. And we become conformed to Him, but it's theological in all the sense, but also it's very real. Just like in marriage, there's this melding of hearts. Like you realize when your spouse is maybe having a bad day, they don't have to say anything, or they're having a good day, or you can just look at each other and you know exactly what you're thinking. And I guess I get this sense of the priesthood is that with the relationship with God and the people, because there's this I say 3 relationships that change for any vocation, and they change particular to the vocation. So your relationship with God, your relationship to the community, whether that's your family, friends, or the parish, and your relationship with yourself. All of these relationships transform in your vocation. And so for me, it's just seeing the priesthood and these relationships just shift in that identity.
Thank you for sharing that. That makes perfect sense. Any other thoughts on the vocation of priesthood? Yes, in that regard.
I agree. It is about relationship. It's not standing apart from the people. It's walking with them. And I think just being transparent. It's being. I mean, I've learned that. I mean, I've been a priest almost 37 years in May, so I have a lot of experience under my belt. But I think the more I've been able to share with the people of God, the beautiful parishioners that I have sought to serve and have served me in so many ways in my parishes, I've learned to be more vulnerable with them. You know, when I was first ordained, it was kind of like, well, maybe they don't want to see that human side. But I am human. A priest is human. We're not someone other than who we are and who God has made us to be. And the more I was able to share my own brokenness and my struggles, I think the more they began to see priesthood as something that is very much alive and vibrant and needed in our world today. Not just in functionary types of a role, not just for the sacraments, which is very important, certainly, but knowing that relationship with them means they're going to be drawn to the sacraments through sometimes my own weaknesses, my own vulnerabilities, my own brokenness, and knowing that we all together stand in need of God, and that we all need the mercy that Jesus brings to us. And so for me, it is just being in that relationship with them and holding their babies. Of course, I'm a baby freak. I love babies. Holding their babies, not just baptize them, okay, go home, but it's like, as a parish priest, I have the opportunity to go and celebrate with them. And I see that little boy or girl growing up, and we have a relationship. They wave and they run up to their parish priest. I love that part of a relationship. So it's not what he does behind the altar, it's who he is with the people.
That's awesome. And it really is a journey, you know. I've witnessed it in the priests and the people that I know who have considered priesthood. It really is a journey for all of us. We're on a journey. We're on a pilgrimage toward heaven. And all of us can understand that, you know, there is a transformation that happens in our life. But I think we talked earlier about some of the misconceptions, some of the hesitation, some of the questions that may be in the minds and hearts of our family members, our friends. If a young man or a man of any age would consider the call to a priesthood, what goes through their minds may have an effect on what happens to that person, that man, whether he decides to pursue that call or not. And that does have an effect on the rest of the church, right? I mean, if we don't have as many priests as God may have originally desired us to have, that has an effect on the church and the world. So that's why we want to talk today about the call to priesthood and really kind of clear up some of these things. We're coming up on a break right now, but I do want to just touch on maybe if you all we talked about the misconception of loneliness. What are some other questions, doubts, misconceptions? We won't dive into them right now. We'll kind of tease for the next segment. But what have you heard, maybe not only in your family, but also from your brother seminarians? And I'll throw this to the seminarians.
One thing that comes to mind right off the bat is if you enter seminary, you are going to become a priest without question. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's one of the leading things, and the fear that many men have, or even families have, if their son enters seminary, then years later he's going to become a priest.
Okay, so that's a thing that we'll discuss, yes, in the next segment. Another?
Along the lines of that is if you discern out of the seminary, like you failed. I think that's a common
one.
Yes.
Another one, Bishop Gary, I'll throw it to you.
I think that somehow, we spoke earlier about loneliness, but that there's not going to be a lot of fulfillment as you can find in other areas or careers, as they would say, or professions, and yet it's just the opposite.
Okay, so we are going to take a short break. Stay with us. In our second segment, we're going to be learning about the journey to priesthood. What are the steps? What actually happens? We're going to break that down. In case you're wondering, you know somebody who's thinking about priesthood, or you yourself may be thinking about priesthood. We're going to talk to these gentlemen here about what is actually involved in that process. Also, those joys, those challenges of the journey, and addressing the preconceived notions. We'll shed light on those, and we're going to bring hope to you no matter what your situation is. You're listening to Journeys of Hope. This is Angela Sealana of Pilgrim Center of Hope. I'm here with Bishop Gary Janak, Luis de la Cruz, and Moses Castro, our Auxiliary Bishop, as well as seminarians. Stay with us. This is Angela Sealana.
And I'm Jason Nunez.
We are two of the hosts of Journeys of Hope, the weekly radio broadcast and podcast program that brings you inspiring stories of faith, hope, and love from around the world. We have an important message today to share with you.
As we approach the 5th year of this program, because of you, we have been able to reach tens of thousands of people through podcasts and over the airwaves.
When we say that Pilgrim Center of Hope's programming is supported by God's grace and by you, we truly mean it. We're grateful for everyone who has supported us to make our mission possible since 1993. This effort of support and the need for support is ongoing. Presently, Pilgrim Center of Hope is seeking monthly supporters who want to help us continue our mission of guiding people to encounter Christ.
You can also make a difference by sponsoring a week of Journeys of Hope for only $50. You can dedicate a week of the program to a special person or organization of your choice.
This can be a spiritual gift, in honor or in memory of someone who has touched your life.
Your dedication will not only honor your loved one, but also join us in our mission of evangelization and spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to thousands of listeners.
Please consider becoming a monthly supporter of Pilgrim Center of Hope or dedicated Journeys of Hope program today. You can do so by visiting pilgrimcenterofhope.org and click How to Help. There you'll find a donation form. Or if you'd like to dedicate a Journeys of Hope program, you can do so on our wish list.
Feel free to call us at 210-521-3377 to discuss how you can partner with Pilgrim Center of Hope to continue guiding people to Christ. Thank you for your generosity, and as we say at Pilgrim Center of Hope, every little bit helps. May God bless you.
Welcome back to Journeys of Hope. I'm Angela Sealana, Media Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope. And today we are diving into the journey to priesthood. We are joined by San Antonio's Auxiliary Bishop Gary Janak, who directs the Vocation office, as well as Seminarians Moses Castro and Luisa Cruz. So gentlemen, thank you again for being so generous with your time today.
Certainly.
Thank you. Well, let's pick up from our last segment. We were talking about some misconceptions of the journey to priesthood. And I want to first, in this segment, talk about, yes, that journey. But there is a question of how, if somebody starts pursuing that call, maybe they think that they're called to priesthood, how does that affect their relationship with their family and their friends? So let's start off with the seminarians, first of all. Could you share a little bit from your experience to that question?
One of the things for me and my family, the question that came up for not only for them, but also for myself was, can I see my family once I walk onto the seminary campus? What would that look like? Would I be able to go home to visit on the weekends or over the Christmas break? And we're blessed here within the Archdiocese of San Antonio to have Assumption Seminary, which is our home seminary. And so thanks be to God, I'm able to be formed right here in my home archdiocese, which then affords me the opportunity to actually see my family quite often. They can come up to visit at the seminary. We'll go out to lunch or to dinner, or I'll go down. I'm from Lytle, just south of San Antonio, so I'll make the 30-minute drive, clear my head, and go visit my family. And I can do that actually quite frequently. And so it's a real gift as a diocesan seminarian for me that I have that opportunity to be near my family. And if God wills ordination to the priesthood for me, then please God that I will remain here in the Archdiocese and still be available to my family when I can. So for them, that was a real concern. Will we ever be able to see you again?
Yeah.
And the answer is absolutely. And thanks be to God for that.
Well, before we go on to Luis, Moses mentioned that you are in formation as a diocesan priest, right? So just to clarify for those who may not be familiar, Bishop Gary, could you explain why he used that term?
There are diocesan priests, and of course there are religious priests belonging to a particular community, whatever that community may be. They have their own charism, their own way of rule of life, what they do in terms of particular ministries. Some may be exclusively in teaching, others may do other types of ministry. A diocesan priest are those that belong to a diocese itself.
Okay.
So for San Antonio, there's 19 counties. We make up the Archdiocese of San Antonio. We have more than 171 parishes and missions, and so diocesan priests are parish priests. They may have other particular specialized ministries within the Archdiocese itself, but they belong to a geographical diocese itself, a geographical area. We call that a local church. Of course, the ordinary, in our case, Archbishop Gustavo, he's the shepherd. Bishop Mike and I assist him. All the priests assist the Archbishop in operating, sacramentalizing, preaching in the pastoral care of that church entrusted to him. Okay, so we're co-workers with our ordinary, with our Archbishop, and so we may be transferred across the Archdiocese, but we're not going to be transferred across the country or the world. So
that's a good point.
We're more rooted, and that's part of it. And I speak a lot about that, and that's our spirituality, but that's also our charism. Not only religious have charisms, but diocesan priests have charisms. And one is that connection to the people. So if Moses and Luis here are, please God, they're going to be priests, it doesn't matter really where they are in the Archdiocese, they're going to know the people, though, because they're going to have other kind of gatherings. It's not like they're going to be in one segment and we never see them again. They interact, and the priests are, they're connected to the people, and the people are connected to their priest. They love their religious. They appreciate the international priests from other dioceses, but they love their diocesan priests because they're their sons. They're homegrown, and it's their sons, so to speak. So that's what's really unique for us. We are more grounded to and rooted in our particular area.
I love that you said that, and you explained that so well. For those who are more maybe hearing a call to religious life, we are going to be talking about that here on Journeys of Hope next week, so stay tuned to that. So there are religious priests as well. Well, here we are talking to some diocesan guys. So Luis, could you share a little bit more about how your journey has affected your relationship with your family and friends?
Sure. So what I realized is when I was discerning, there was a point in the beginning where it was just internal, and I was the only person who knew I was discerning. Mm-hmm. And there came that point where I had to speak it out loud, because if I'm going to move forward with this. And so that did create these relationships where it put dialogue into place. And sometimes the dialogue was a challenge, and sometimes it was easy. But it made me realize that the questions I was receiving from my family or from my friends, whether they were challenging questions or not, was that discernment happens in a community. No one discerns alone, and it would be as ridiculous as if somebody discerned alone as a guy, or if I was going to see a girl and say, we're meant to be married, it doesn't matter what your opinion is, like, I'm going to marry you.
That's right.
And so in the same way, this opened me up to a community of discerning, and within my own family, because they knew me better than anybody, and then entering into getting to know the vocation director. But I guess that's how it transformed my relationship, and it made me grow in a way that I didn't realize at the time. When you're in it, it's hard to see, like, well, somebody disagrees that I should do this.
Yeah.
But what does that really mean? And in hindsight, it's like, wow, this is making me ask myself to see where is this coming from, this call? Is it from my own desires, quote unquote, or is this God calling me? Because I think at the end of the day, the priesthood is a call from the Lord.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that you said that. And going into the aspect of discernment, what I've learned on my personal journey is that I thought I was called to religious life, and I checked it out, over and over again. And it just, everybody around me thought, oh, Angela's going to be a nun. That just seems to fit her so well. But in my heart, as I was discerning with these different communities, it was like, actually, I think the Lord wanted me to experience this process for later, but I'm not called to this. And it was actually frustrating for me. So that discernment process is part of your journey, right? It's valuable no matter what. And so when we think about the call of the Lord, it's like, it's not just for 10 years from now, it's for right now in your life. Bishop Gary, did you have something to add? I saw you writing things down. Did you have something to add to our little discussion here?
I was struck by what Luis stated in terms of that, and I was smiling to myself, that at some point all of us know that it's just God's the only one that knows that call. I was thinking back, when I kept it within myself. But you're speaking about the discernment process, and like I said, in my story, it was really fast. It was abrupt, almost. I don't think it would happen that way today. But we have here in the Archdiocese, and I'm just so blessed to be vocation director, to see a monthly support group. We call it the Melchizedek Project. A lot of the seminarians come once a month and share their story and some other material about vocation. It's just men that they're not going to be priests. All of them. I wish they would, but they're not. I would pray they would. But nonetheless, they're exploring. They're discerning, as you said. And then for those that are taking it to that next level, we have a monthly discernment program where they come and stay at the seminary for a weekend and meet the seminarians a little bit in a deeper kind of way, and then we explore more with them. But I can tell you, in terms of that process, I've never, in all my years in working with vocation work and just being a priest, no one has ever said to me, be it men or women that have gone through the process, as you were saying, Angela, did they ever say, gosh, what a waste of time? They never said it. They said that discernment process helped me so much to solidify really the call that God is giving to me. And for some, it's marriage. It may be just a faithful, chaste, single life. Others, maybe it is. They go into the seminary or to a convent. But no one's ever said, God, what a waste of time. So I think that's always enlightening to me, and is a constant reminder of how important it is that God is calling all the time. But we need some kind of structure, though. It can't be just between God and myself. There's going to be that externalizing it. As Lee says,
right.
So you got to tell someone, and then that's where the real discernment begins.
Yeah. One of the beautiful things that I love about going to a priestly ordination is when the congregation also says, yes, we welcome this man.
That's
like,
right.
we call him.
That's right.
It's not just, some far off voice or some bishop somewhere saying that we want this man to be a priest. It's supposed to come from the community. And so, yes, the community is part of that process. Let's talk about what is that process. So we spoke about personally discerning, right? You hear that call in your heart. Then you say, you know what, I need to look into this. So maybe you approached the seminary. Who was the first person that you guys talked to in your discernment process? Do you remember?
It was the vocation director at the time.
Okay.
And so that helped me. I went online because I was a cyber discerner for a while. Yeah, there you go. And then I got the courage and I ended up sending an email. And then Sister Anna was another person who I got in contact, who works in the vocation office. And so as I was in dialogue with these people, I was able to go to different monthly meetings and have support groups, people who had similar experiences, and it brought me into this world. Yeah.
Great. Moses, how about you?
Sure. When I was at Texas State, as I mentioned, the campus ministry director prompted me with a question, and then the vocation director visited once a month the campus ministry. So I was able to chat with him out of the Diocese of Austin to just talk about what discernment was and what priesthood was. But I was convinced that I wanted to just do ministry for the church. And I thought it would be retreat ministry because I was impacted by that so much. So the first step that I did was to do ministry actually out in the Archdiocese of Seattle. I did youth retreat ministry just as that opportunity to kind of grow in my relationship with Christ, grow in relationship with others and with the church, and deepen my understanding of the faith, and to kind of test and tell the Lord, I'm going to give you this time and this space to speak to me and kind of direct my heart in the proper direction. I'll just say by the end of that time, he didn't make it more clear if I was supposed to be a priest or not. But nonetheless, the experience helped me to grow, which I think that's really important. And so anyone who's considering it, take actionable steps to grow in that relationship with Christ and the church. And then ultimately, I did reach out to the vocation director who was active in young adult ministry here in the Archdiocese of San Antonio. And so he had grown to know me already in my leadership of young adult ministry here in the Archdiocese. And so it was very natural when I just kind of mentioned to him, hey, do you think we could maybe grab a bite? I want to chat a little bit more. It was very natural kind of incremental kind of steps of, this is what you would need to do next. These are some questions you might want to ask yourself. And then ultimately, thanks be to God, I'm in the seminary.
Okay, so we've got a lot of different options here, different ways that, God is directing you.
For me, it was going to the parish priest.
There you go.
And that's a good step. So for young men out there that are discerning, it's go talk to your parish priest.
Yes.
Because then my parish priest contacted the vocation director.
All right. He did that work for you.
Yeah, he did. So, these guys, they were older. I was younger. But I think that's it. That's always a good step, though, too. Because we were talking about earlier about that relationship. We want, hopefully, our parish priests are going to have a good relationship with the young men and women in their parishes. But let that be that one, too. And then if it's intimidating, so I don't know what a vocation director is. Everyone knows their parish priest. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, we obviously have this step that you have to take where you consider a formal commitment of some kind or a formal step that you're taking. So what would you say is the next step after you talk to somebody, you contact the vocation director? What actually happens after that?
I think the important aspect, and Luis touched on this just a little bit, is to come into this experience with the awareness that you're not discerning alone.
Okay.
Right? And so I think really trusting the people that God has put in place to help you. And so in this case, certainly the Archdiocesan Vocation Director, who can help direct your steps. In addition to that, just having a spiritual director, or as Bishop Gary said, your pastor, they can help you decide when and how to move forward. And once that next step, let's say, is an application process to the seminary, that you're really hand in hand with the vocations office, whose role and responsibility is entrusted by the Archbishop in his ministry as a shepherd of the local church, that they will walk with you. And we are so blessed, really, by the team at the vocation office. And I say this from my own personal experience. They are entirely invested in helping young men and women also to be connected with a proper context, that they want what is best for us, and they are also looking out for our best interest in mind as well. And so sometimes we can get overwhelmed by saying, I know what it should be, I know what I want. And really the important aspect is also trusting the church. And so I can't say that enough, that the next steps are really in conversation with the Vocations office. But for me, in my case, it was reaching out to the vocation director and then coming to a point where it was, okay, come and stay at the seminary for a period of time so that we can both really see if this is what the Lord's inviting you to. And ultimately, at the conclusion of that set period of time, then an application to the seminary is in order. And then, of course, being accepted to the seminary and so on and so forth. So you've mentioned it many times. It is indeed a journey. Be open to that journey, I think, is the most important thing to keep in mind.
Okay, so be open. If you apply to the seminary, I mean, what kind of application is that like? Is it a paper application? Is it an interview? What's involved
All
in
of
that?
all of the above. It is intense, but it needs to be, right? We're speaking about a lifelong commitment. We're speaking about a lot of responsibility, and we want only the best for the people of God, because they deserve the best shepherd, the best priest possible. If I could clone these men, that'd be great. I wish I had 30, 40 Moses and Luises, but the fact is, it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
Yeah.
The quality of the leaders are the future leaders. And so we go through the process. So it's not only a paperwork kind of process, but it's very much the interviews. It's getting to them to know who we are, and then letting, long before they even sit before the seminary board for that interview, we're going to have a local board of lay people and priests. And then psychological exams are done. There has to be testing to see him, and we discovered in some cases that maybe the good man, really a good person, just recognizing he's just not going to have the academic skills to be able to handle the studies, et cetera, of what's required. And I know, too, in particular, since I've been here, they've gone on to become brothers. And so it's good. So it's not always, they may, in that discernment process of the testing, et cetera, the interview process, may find out, it's my vocation is even clearer now. Maybe I'm really not called to priesthood, but I'm called to service in another way.
Right.
So it's intense, but of course it has to be.
Well, thank you for being intense. I appreciate that. Someone who is on the receiving end of that ministry. Now, after you're accepted to the seminary, then you obviously live at the seminary. What is the formation process like during the seminary when you're there?
So there's 4 dimensions that the seminary focuses on, and it's the academic, then you got your spiritual, then you have your pastoral, and your human formation. These are just 4 areas of your life that you focus on to develop. And so like the academics, it's self-explanatory. You go to school, you learn. And the pastoral, you go out and do ministry, because it's part of the identity of the priesthood there is this pastoral charity of the priest. And then the spiritual aspect is my relationship deepening with God? Is my prayer life deepening? And in the human formation, I think is just so vital. I've heard it said, like, you can't be a great saint if you can't even be a good person. If you're not even showing up on time. Like, these are just rudimentary areas of our life. Grace builds on nature. And so this beautiful aspect of growing as a good person, as a good human being, so that you can become a saint.
So like having healthy habits,
yes,
knowing how to, balance your lifestyle, all those kind of things are part of the human formation.
Learning how to say no.
Handling stress.
Yes.
Very good, very good. Okay, so we have kind of this sense that you go through how many years of formation, more or less?
7 to 9.
7
Depends
to
on
9.
how, where the young, what life stage the young man is entering in seminary.
Okay. And then at a certain point, there is a formal installation of into the order of the acolyte, which is like an altar server, and then of the lector, which I think most Catholics know is the person that proclaims the scriptures. And what is the point of that? I would just like for people to understand, like, why do we do that for our seminarians? Bishop Gary, they're looking at you.
I know. We used to have what we call in the church minor orders. Okay. So there was even tonsure. So these were almost like in the minor orders, like small ordinations, so to speak. And it's all changed since the Second Vatican Council, and it's clearly understood now. Today, it's candidacy first. Okay, so that's the first statement to the church itself, that this seminarian is on his way, if this is God's will, to ordination to the priesthood. Mm-hmm. So he becomes a candidate. Mm-hmm. And then lector, proclaiming God's word, and remembering now with Pope Francis, he's changed it. Lector and the ministry also of acolyte are also open to lay people as well.
Yes.
Okay. So it has an understanding that one receives necessary training, one has a formal installation ceremony to earmark this person, not to make him or her better, but to set them apart in the community for this particular proclamation of the word, attention, a little deeper attention to God's word itself and how that is to transform one, therefore how to proclaim it very clearly. So it's a recognition that this man, in this case now for a lay woman even, this is their role, it's a particular role. And then acolyte, it's more than only serving, it's knowing how to prepare the altar. An acolyte that's installed they can't have benediction, but they can expose the Blessed Sacrament. Mm-hmm. So there's a more of a responsibility that comes in serving God and the people in that role as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just recognitions along the way of these particular gifts, the importance. If you're going to be a deacon, if you're going to be a priest, one has to be consumed by the word, one has to be able to therefore then proclaim it. And then also, do you feel comfortable? Are you called to serve at the altar?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I understand that there is also some requirements as far as the pastoral training. Luis mentioned that there's ministry experiences you have throughout your formation, but perhaps a time as hospital chaplaincy work, doing that, or jail ministry, that is actually a requirement for somebody who's in seminary. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think what we've already outlined a little bit is that there's this holistic approach to the formation of a priest, right? And so it's really beautiful to recognize that the church really cares here and is providing so much for the man who's in the process of formation. And even what we've said already, that I'm grateful myself that it's very incremental, very unique process to each person. I had the opportunity to do an immersion experience in Mexico to work on my Spanish, recognizing that the people of God here have that need that we speak their language and that we can communicate with them at their level, in their space where it's really comfortable for them. And so looking at each person individually, each seminarian individually, working with your formation advisor, your vocation director of seminarians, to identify areas of, hey, I think there's an opportunity for you to develop this skill or this pastoral experience a little bit more. So we're going to ask this of you, which they may not ask from someone else. And so, yes, we're all at the seminary together, but at the same time, there's a unique tailoring to each individual seminarian to ensure that they're growing as a whole person.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, that there is that support and that it is individualized in a sense, regardless of there being, yes, these certain steps and requirements, that it is a discernment process for the person. We have just a little bit of time left, so we do want to kind of round this out in terms of the steps. So once someone has gone through the steps that we've mentioned, then at that point, they would be considered for ordination to the transitional diaconate. Is that correct, Bishop Gary?
That's correct. They receive from their formators and through the rector of the seminary, the archbishop or any bishop that sends their men here to San Antonio to our seminary, they'll wait for that letter of recognition, that letter stating to the bishop, this man, in our opinion, is prepared for ordination. We approve him in light of all that we've considered here this afternoon and today about what that preparation is. And then, they receive that letter, and the bishop then calls them to orders.
Great. And so they're called, they are ordained as a deacon, and then they go through some parish ministry, right? As a deacon, my understanding
We call
is
it now,
typically?
the program for priestly formation has been revised.
Okay.
They call it the vocational synthesis now. So they are actually assigned, these two men will be going through that new revised program, and that is, Luis, for instance, will be ordained, please God, to the diaconate May 24th, and then he will be in a parish up to maybe a year, several months up to a year, doing what we call a vocational synthesis, working in that parish. He'd be finished with school. He's going to have his degree in theology, etc. So all the academic, that part, we're always students, of course, but that formal academic is ended, so he can have full time in the parish.
Awesome.
Assign him to a good community, assign him to a good pastor, a mentor, and he's going to be able to continue that process of preparation, because the reality is we're expecting a lot of our newly ordained priests today.
Yes, and then they're ordained a priest. And just briefly, I'd like to ask you guys if you could give one sentence of advice to someone who's considering a priesthood, what would you say?
Be honest with yourself before God. God knows us, of course, so that self-knowledge, self-awareness is vital.
Thank you. Luis?
At the root of all discernment is prayer. If you stop praying at any time, there's no way to hear God's voice moving in your life, to hear how the Holy Spirit is tugging at you. So I can't emphasize the importance of prayer.
And I'll just say, do not be afraid.
There you go. Short and sweet. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time today. For all of you who have joined us on Journeys of Hope, if you're interested, we will connect you on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org, with the Vocations office website, with all the, more information. So please visit us there, pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or call 210-521-3377. And we here at Pilgrim Center of Hope, we're happy to point you in the right direction. Friends, we invite you to walk your journey with love, faith, courage, and hope. And let us pray for our priests. Until next time, may God bless you and safe travels.